Preston Vance walked into the closing room expecting a stack of documents and a polite goodbye. Then he saw his ex-wife. Camille Hart sat at the far end of the table in a deep red suit, her hands folded over the documents that would transfer the Halstead project out of his company and into hers. For one full second, Preston did not move. This was the building he had put his name on. The tower he had bragged about in interviews. The project he thought he had kept after the divorce. And now Camille was sitting across from him, calm as morning, ready to take it back. 9 months earlier, one cancelled flight sent Camille home early, and one security notification showed her exactly what kind of life she had been living. The trip got cancelled at the gate. That was the detail Camille would return to later. In the months when she was rebuilding a life she had not known was already broken. A storm somewhere over the middle of the country had stopped half the flights out of the city, and the airline had pushed her meeting in Chicago to the following week. So at 11 at night she rode home from the airport in the back of a car, tired, thinking about a financing memo, expecting nothing. The penthouse was dark when she came in. She did not turn on the main lights. She set her bag down, poured a glass of water, and sat at the long marble island in the kitchen. The way she had 1,000 times before. Her phone showed a notification from the home security app. A motion alert from earlier that evening, flagged because the system did not recognize the timing. She almost dismissed it. She had set the cameras up 2 years ago after a break-in 3 floors down, and they recorded the common areas, the entry hall, the great room, the wide gallery hallway. Not the bedrooms. She had been careful about that. She believed in privacy, even in her own home. She opened the app to clear the alert. The recording showed the gallery hallway at 6:40 in the evening. Preston walked through the frame. That was normal. He lived here. But then a second figure crossed behind him, and the second figure was Whitney, her half-sister, who did not live here, who had her own apartment 20 blocks south, who had no reason to be walking through Camille's home at 6:40 on a night Camille was supposed to be in Chicago. Camille watched the clip again. There was nothing in it that a court would call anything. A man walked down a hall. A woman walked down the same hall. People visited. Whitney was family. Camille told herself this while she scrubbed back through the day's footage, and then back through the previous day, and then the day before that. She did not feel her heart speeding up. She noticed instead that her hands had gone very still on the counter, the way they did when she was reading a contract, and found the clause that changed everything. The system kept 30 days of recordings. She watched them in order, fast, then slow. Then fast again. She did not cry. She was not at that part yet. She was at the part where she counted. Whitney appeared in the footage 11 times over 30 days. On nights Camille was traveling, which she did often, because Camille was the one who flew out to walk lenders and operators and city officials through the projects that carried Preston's name. Whitney arrived in the early evening and the timestamps did not show her leaving until the cameras caught Preston letting her out the next morning, his shirt loose, her hair pinned up the way she wore it to look unbothered. At 2 in the morning. Camille was still sitting at the island. She thought about the wedding. Whitney had stood beside her in a deep green dress and held the rings. She thought about the hospital 4 years ago, when their father died, when Camille had pulled Whitney into the family with both arms because that was what you did, because a half-sister was still A sister, because grief was supposed to be the thing that bound you. She thought about the job she had given Whitney at Vance Group, brand and public relations, a real role. With a real salary, because Camille had wanted her clothes, had wanted to give her something steady. She had built a door into her own life and handed Whitney the key. Camille closed the app. She sat in the dark and let herself feel exactly one thing. Which was a cold, clean clarity, the kind that arrived in her like a held breath finally released. She had spent her whole career reading the difference between what people said and what the numbers said. The numbers here were simple. 11 nights. 30 days. And under that, when she let herself look, a pattern that ran back much further than a month, because now that she knew the shape of it she could see all the small things she had filed away and never examined. The pauses when she entered a room. The way Whitney had started staying late at company events. The way Preston had stopped asking about her trips and started asking only when she would be gone. She had been giving a great deal of thought, lately, to a hotel and residential tower called the Halstead. It was Preston's crowning project, the one the press wrote about, the one with his name on every rendering. It was also, quietly, hers. She had designed the concept, set the brand language, structured the operator partnership, and walked the lenders through every floor of the model. The Halstead was the thing Preston pointed to when he wanted to be called a builder. It was the thing Camille pointed to when she wanted to remember what she could do. She had given that building to him the way she had given Whitney the key. She did not decide anything that night. She had learned a long time ago that decisions made at 2 in the morning were rarely the right ones. What she decided was simpler. She decided to find out exactly what she was standing on before she took a single step. She went to the guest room on the far side of the penthouse and slept there. She told herself it was because she did not want to wake Preston. That was not the reason. The reason was that she could not yet lie down in the bed she now understood she had been sharing with 2 people instead of 1. In the morning she got up early, dressed, made coffee, and was at the island when Preston came down. He kissed the top of her head. He asked how Chicago had gone. Pushed to next week, she said. Weather. That's a shame, he said. He poured his coffee. He looked exactly like the man she had married. Easy and handsome and certain, and she understood for the first time how little she had ever truly seen him. You should rest while you're home. You work too hard. I might, she said. She watched him leave for the office. Then she picked up her phone and sent one message to Tessa Quinn, who had been her closest friend since they were 19 and who was also one of the sharpest attorneys in the city. The message read, I need to see you. Not over the phone. Today if you can. Tessa wrote back in under a minute. Lunch. My office. Tell me which kind of bad it is so I bring the right coffee. Camille looked at the message for a moment. Then she typed, the kind where I need to know what I own. She set the phone face down on the marble and looked out at the city, gray and bright under a flat winter sky, and she felt the morning settle into place around her like the first line of a plan she had not yet written. Tessa's office was on the 31st floor of a tower in the financial district, and she had cleared her afternoon before Camille even arrived. She took one look at Camille's face and shut the door. Talk, Tessa said. All of it. I'll keep up. Camille told her. She told it the way she would have told a board, in order, without decoration. The cancelled flight. The motion alert. 11 nights in 30 days. Whitney. The timestamps. The morning footage of Preston letting her out the door. Tessa did not gasp. She was a litigator. She had heard worse, and she knew that the worst thing she could do right now was make it about her own shock. She listened, took notes, and when Camille finished she set her pen down. First, Tessa said, "I'm sorry. I'm going to say that once, because you're my friend and it's true, and then I'm going to stop being sorry and start being useful. Is that all right?" "That's exactly what I need," Camille said. "Then here's the useful part. You did the right thing not confronting him. The second he knows you know, he starts moving money, and he starts moving fast. Right now you have something he doesn't have. You have time, and you have the fact that he thinks everything is normal. Don't give either of those away." "I wasn't planning to," Camille said. "I know you weren't. That's why I love you." Tessa pulled a legal pad toward her. "Walk me through the structure. The prenup, your studio, the company. I drafted some of this, but I want it out of your mouth so I hear how you understand it." So Camille walked her through it. Before the marriage she had run a boutique development studio, Heart Studio, small but respected, the kind of firm that did the difficult, beautiful work that larger companies hired out. When she married Preston, she had folded the studio's active projects into Vance Group, but she had kept the trademark, the design library, and the intellectual property under her own name. Tessa had insisted on that, 6 years ago, across a different table. "You kept the IP, Tessa said. "Say it again so I can enjoy it." "I kept the IP, Camille said. "The brand frameworks, the design systems, the operating concepts. Heart Studio licenses them to Vance Group. The license is mine to renew or end." "And the Halstead," Tessa said. Camille was quiet for a moment. "The Halstead brand, the design language, the guest experience model, all of it sits on a Heart Studio license. Preston owns the land and the entity. I own the thing that makes it the Halstead instead of another tower." Tessa leaned back in her chair. "Do you understand what you just said?" "I understand it better than anyone," Camille said. "I built it." "Then let me be precise about your position," Tessa said. "Your marriage assets are governed by a prenup that protects his premarital fortune and protects your studio and your IP. You will not walk away with half his empire, and from what I'm hearing, you don't want it. You'll walk away with what is legally yours, which is your studio, your IP, and a settlement that reflects the value you contributed. That last number is going to be a fight, but it's a fight we win, because the value you contributed is documented in every deal memo with your fingerprints on it." Camille nodded slowly. "There's a second question," Tessa said, "and I'm going to ask it as your lawyer, not your friend. What do you want? Not what you're owed. What do you actually want out of this?" Camille looked out the window at the gray light on the towers across the way. She thought about the answer for a while, because it deserved a real one. "I don't want his money," she said. "I don't want his company. I don't want to sit in a courtroom and fight him for pieces of a thing I never wanted to own. I want what's mine, clean. I want out of the marriage. And I want him to keep believing, right up until the last moment, that he came out ahead." "Why?" Tessa said. "Because the day he stops believing that," Camille said, "is the day he starts protecting the one thing I actually intend to take." Tessa held her gaze. "Which is?" "The Halstead," Camille said. "Not the marriage. Not the money. The building. I'm going to build the next version of everything he has, better, and when his version falls down under its own weight, I'm going to be standing right there to catch the part of it that was always mine." For a moment neither of them said anything. "You've thought about this," Tessa said. Since 2 o'clock this morning, Camille said. I think about everything in systems. This is just a system that broke. I'm going to map it, and then I'm going to replace it. Tessa picked her pen back up. All right, she said. Then we don't rush. We document. We move quietly. You keep your face exactly the way it is right now, calm, which I notice you've been doing the whole time you told me your sister has been sleeping in your bed, and which is honestly a little frightening. Half-sister, Camille said. Right now, Tessa said, I'm not sure the half part is doing much work for her. Camille almost smiled. It was the first time in 15 hours that anything had reached her. She drove home through the early dark. She did not feel triumphant. She felt something steadier than that, the feeling of standing on ground she had tested and found solid. The grief was still there. It would arrive on its own schedule, she knew, probably alone, probably at night. But under the grief there was now a structure, and structures held. That evening Preston texted that he would be late, a dinner with the lenders on the Halstead, he said, and Camille knew without checking that the lenders had no dinner scheduled, because she was the one who scheduled them. She did not check. She did not need to anymore. She already had the pattern. Checking again would only be the old part of her, the part that still wanted to be wrong. She was done with wanting to be wrong. She sat at the island with a glass of water and a notebook, and at the top of a clean page she wrote one word, the working name of a company that did not exist yet. Meridian. Then she began to write down everything it would need to be. Her mother knew something before Camille said a word. Loretta Hart had raised one daughter, mostly alone, in a small apartment with good light and a kitchen that always smelled of something cooking. She had put Camille through school on a teacher's salary and a second job, and she had watched her daughter become the kind of woman who walked into rooms full of men who controlled billions of dollars and made them listen. Loretta did not have a degree in anything. She had something better, which was the ability to read her own child across a room. She came up from the train 2 days after the lunch with Tessa, on her monthly visit, carrying a bag of groceries she insisted on buying herself because she did not trust the city to sell vegetables that tasted like vegetables. She cooked. She always cooked. She made a pot of greens and a pan of cornbread and a chicken that filled the whole penthouse with a smell that did not belong to a place with marble floors. She watched Camille over dinner. She did not ask. She waited until the plates were cleared and the two of them were sitting in the great room with the city lit up below the windows. You're holding something, Loretta said. I've watched you hold things since you were 6. You hold them in your shoulders. Camille looked at her mother for a long moment. It's Preston, she said. And Whitney. She did not have to say more than that. She watched the knowledge move across her mother's face, and what struck her was that it was not surprise. It was confirmation. How long have you wondered? Camille said. Loretta was quiet. Since the 4th of July, she said finally. You had that party on the roof. I watched her hand him a plate. It was nothing. The way she handed it to him was something. I've handed plates to a lot of men in my life. I know the difference between a plate handed to your sister's husband and a plate handed to your own. Camille closed her eyes briefly. You never said anything. What was I going to say? Loretta said, not unkindly. That I saw the way a woman handed a man a plate. You'd have looked at me like I'd lost my mind. And I hoped I was wrong. I have spent a lot of my life hoping I was wrong about people, and being right anyway. Camille told her the rest. The footage. The count. The plan she had started to build with Tessa, the company on the clean page, the thing she meant to take. She told it plainly, and she did not cry while she told it. When she was done, Loretta reached across the space between them and took her daughter's hand. Your father, Loretta said, was a man I loved and a man who broke things. Whitney is one of the things he made and did not raise. I don't blame the girl for being born. But you brought her into your house and your work because you have your father's good heart and not, thank God, his weakness. And she took that and she used it. That is not on you. You hear me? That is not on you. I keep going back to the hospital, Camille said quietly. When Daddy died. I held her hand in that hallway. I told her we were family now, for real, not just on paper. I meant it. I know you meant it, Loretta said. That's the part that hurts. You don't grieve the people who never meant anything. You grieve the ones you opened the door for. They sat together until late. Loretta stayed the night in the guest room, and in the morning she made eggs and did not mention any of it, and Camille understood that her mother was giving her the gift of an ordinary breakfast, a small flat plain hour with nothing terrible in it. After Loretta left, Camille went into her home office and closed the door, and she finally let the night come for her. It was almost 2 in the morning when it did. She had been working, building out the Meridian plan, when it arrived without warning, the whole weight of it. She put her face in her hands at her own desk and she cried, not the kind of crying that looked like anything, just a long quiet coming apart, for the marriage she had believed in and the sister she had chosen and the simple stupid trust she had handed to both of them with both hands open. She cried for the version of her life she had thought she was living. She cried because she had been good, because she had done it all the right way, because she had built a real career and a real home and a real family out of nothing, and the people she had built it for had used it as a place to hide what they were doing. Then, the way she always did, she stopped. She wiped her face. She drank a glass of water. She sat back down at the desk and looked at the plan on the screen, the org chart, the capital needs, the project list, the working name at the top, and she felt the grief settle into its place behind the work, where it would stay, where it would not run her. She had 2 paths in front of her. One was the path where she stayed small inside this, where she became the wronged wife, where the rest of her life was a story about what had been done to her. She had seen women take that path. She did not judge them. But it was not hers. The other path was the one where this became the smallest part of a much larger story, a footnote in a life that got bigger from here. Where Preston and Whitney were not the ending. Where they were the thing that finally pushed her out of a company that had her name nowhere on it and into a company that would have her name on everything. She chose the second path at 2:15 in the morning, which was not a time for decisions, except that this decision had already been made days ago and her hands had only just caught up to it. She typed a short message to Tessa, to send in the morning. We're moving. Pull everything. I want to know the exact day his license renewal is due. Then she slept, in the guest room again, and for the first time since the footage, she slept all the way through. The license renewal was due in 9 months. Tessa found it buried in the Vance Group corporate calendar, a single-line item that almost no one at the company understood the meaning of, because almost no one at the company understood that the most valuable asset in Preston's empire was rented. Walk me through what this means in plain terms, Camille said. They were in Tessa's office again, with 2 associates Tessa trusted, and the long table was covered in printouts. In plain terms, Tessa said, Heart Studio licenses its design IP and brand frameworks to Vance Group under a renewable agreement. The current term ends in 9 months. You have the unilateral right not to renew. If you don't renew, then every Vance property built on your frameworks, including the Halstead, loses the right to use the brand language, the design system, and the operating model. They keep the buildings. They lose the thing that makes the buildings worth what they're worth. And the Halstead is built entirely on the license, Camille said. Top to bottom, Tessa said. The whole guest experience model, the brand, the marketing position, all of it is yours. Without your license, the Halstead is a very expensive tower with no identity, sitting on a pile of debt that was underwritten on the assumption that it would be a Hart-designed flagship. One of the associates, a careful young woman, spoke up. There's more. The construction loan and the mezzanine financing both have covenants tied to the operator partnership. The hotel operator signed on specifically because of the Hart brand standards. If the brand standards go away, the operator has a right to walk. If the operator walks, the loan covenants trip. Camille looked at the diagram the associate had drawn, the boxes and arrows that showed how the whole structure of Preston's crown jewel ran through a single license with her name on it. So the building stands on me, Camille said. The building stands on you, Tessa said. He just never had to think about it, because you never gave him a reason to. Camille sat with that for a moment. It was not a feeling of power, exactly. It was the feeling of seeing a structure clearly for the first time and understanding both how strong it was and where it would fall. Here's what I'm not going to do, Camille said. I'm not going to end the license out of spite and watch the Halstead die in a hole in the ground. That building deserves to exist. I designed it to exist. What I'm going to do is let the structure work the way structures work. When the time is right, I won't renew. The operator will walk. The financing will wobble. The project will go looking for a new home. And I'm going to make sure that when it does, the only home that can take it is mine. Tessa looked at her. You want to buy it. I want to finish it, Camille said. There's a difference. He wants to own a building. I want to build one. That's been the difference between us the whole time. That afternoon Camille made 2 calls. The first was to Eleanor Frost. Camille had met Eleanor years ago, on the other side of a deal, when Eleanor's fund had been a lender on an early Vance project and Eleanor had asked sharper questions than anyone else in the room. Eleanor had said, at the end of that meeting, in front of Preston, whoever built this model should be running this company. Preston had laughed it off. Camille had never forgotten it. She called Eleanor and said only that she had something to discuss that she would prefer to discuss in person, and that it was the kind of thing Eleanor had been waiting 2 years to hear. Eleanor said, I have Thursday. Come hungry. I'll feed you and you'll tell me you're finally leaving him. Camille did not answer that. She did not have to. The second call was to Bianca Reyes. Bianca was 31, a development lead at Vance Group, the most talented person on Camille's old team and the one Camille had spent 3 years quietly training to think the way she thought. Bianca was wasted at Vance. Everyone above her took credit for her work. Camille had watched it happen and had not been able to stop it from inside. She met Bianca for coffee in a bright cafe near the office, away from anyone who might wonder. I'm going to ask you something, Camille said, and I want you to take your time before you answer. I'm building something. It's not at Vance. I can't tell you all of it yet. But I'm going to need a head of development, and the only name on my list is yours. If you're in, I'll tell you everything when the time is right. If you're not, this conversation never happened and nothing changes between us. Bianca did not take her time at all. I've been waiting 2 years for someone to ask me that, she said. I'm in. I don't even need to know the rest. I know how you build. That's enough. Camille felt something settle in her chest that she had not expected, a small steadiness. She had walked into this thinking she had lost a family. She was beginning to understand that she was assembling a different one, made of people who had been underestimated in the same rooms she had. On Thursday she had lunch with Eleanor Frost, and across a quiet table in a private dining room she laid out the whole thing, the license, the structure, the plan, the company called Meridian that would build the next generation of hospitality properties and would, when the moment came, be ready to acquire a certain distressed flagship from a certain failing competitor. Eleanor listened all the way through without interrupting once. When Camille finished, Eleanor set down her fork. I've backed 31 companies, Eleanor said. I've never moved on one this fast. But I have spent 2 years watching that man take bows for buildings he couldn't have drawn the lobby of. I told him, to his face, that whoever built his model should be running his company. I think I'm about to be proven right. Tell me the number. Camille told her the number. Eleanor wrote something on the back of her business card and slid it across the table. It was a larger number. That's what I'll put in, Eleanor said, to make sure you never have to go back to him for anything. Now, let's talk about who else belongs at this table. Preston asked for the divorce on a Sunday. Camille had noticed, over the years, that Preston preferred Sundays for anything that mattered. He had proposed on a Sunday. He had announced the Halstead on a Sunday. There was something in him that treated the day as a clean page, a place to put a thing he had decided and wanted to feel good about deciding. He came into the great room in the late morning. Loretta had gone home the week before. Whitney was, conveniently, not anywhere, which told Camille that the conversation had been planned between them, because Whitney was never not somewhere these days. "Can we talk?" Preston said. "Of course," Camille said. She set down the financing report she had been reading, which was for Meridian, though he could not have known that. She folded her hands. She gave him her full attention, the way she always had, the way that had once felt like love and now felt like watching a man walk toward a door he did not know she had already unlocked. He sat across from her. He had rehearsed it. She could hear the rehearsal in the smoothness of it. "I love you," he said. "I want you to know that first. But I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I don't think we're the same people we were when we started. We've grown in different directions. You're always working. You're always somewhere else. And I think we both deserve to be with someone who's actually present." Present. She held the word in her mind and did not let it touch her face. "I think we should separate," he said. "I think we should divorce. Cleanly. With respect. I don't want this to be ugly." She let a moment pass. "I hear you," she said. He blinked. He had braced for something. Tears, an argument, a question with his name in it. He had not braced for agreement, and the agreement seemed to unsettle him more than a fight would have. "You're not surprised," he said. "I've felt the distance too," she said, which was true in a way he would never understand. "I don't want something ugly either. Have your lawyer send the terms. I'll have Tessa review everything. We can do this like adults." "You're being very calm about this," he said, and there was something almost suspicious under it, a man feeling for a trap and not finding one because the trap was somewhere else entirely. "What would yelling get either of us?" she said. "Send the terms, Preston." He nodded. He stood. He hovered for a second, as if he had expected the moment to be heavier, and was disappointed to find it light. "Thank you," he said, "for being reasonable." She said nothing to that. There was nothing in her that wanted to thank him back. He went upstairs. A few minutes later she heard his voice on the phone, low and pleased, and she knew without listening that he was telling Whitney it had gone well, that Camille had taken it fine, that the path was clearing. Camille picked up her phone and called Tessa. "He asked," she said. "Today," Tessa said. "This morning." "Clean and respectful," he said. "He wants it to be easy." "Then let's make it easy," Tessa said, "for us. His lawyer is going to send terms designed to protect the company structure and look generous on the personal side. He'll offer you a big monthly number to make you feel taken care of and to keep you from looking too hard at anything else. Don't react to the number. The number is a distraction." "I know," Camille said. "I don't want his money. You know what I want." "I know exactly what you want," Tessa said. "Your studio. Your IP. The license intact, in your control, renewing on your timeline. And a settlement that puts a real dollar figure on the value you built, documented, so that when this is over no one can ever say you took anything that wasn't yours. And I want him to think he won, Camille said. That's the part one love, Tessa said. He's going to walk out of this thinking he kept the company and got rid of the wife. He's not going to realize until much later that the wife kept the one thing the company can't live without. The terms arrived 10 days later. They were exactly what Tessa had predicted. A generous monthly figure. A clean split of the personal assets. And buried in the company section, a clause that tried, quietly, to make the Hart Studio license permanent and non-cancelable as part of the settlement. Tessa called Camille the moment she read it. They tried to lock the license, Tessa said. Permanent, irrevocable, baked into the divorce. They want your IP nailed to that company forever. Which means someone over there finally understands what the license is, even if Preston doesn't. Strike it, Camille said. Already drafting, Tessa said. We accept the personal terms. We accept the settlement, with a documented value adjustment that reflects your contribution. And we hold the line on the license. It stays renewable. It stays yours. We give them everything they think they want and we keep the only thing that matters. The negotiation took 6 weeks. Preston's lawyer pushed on the license 3 times. Each time Tessa pushed back with a wall of documentation, and each time the push got weaker, because there was no legal ground to stand on, because the IP had been Camille's from before the marriage and the prenup said so in language Tessa had written years ago for exactly this kind of day. In the end they agreed. Preston got his clean divorce and his company and his big public story about 2 people who had simply grown apart. Camille got her studio, her IP, her settlement, and a license that would come up for renewal in 7 months, fully within her control. She signed the papers on a Thursday morning in a conference room. Tessa sat beside her. Preston sat across the table with his lawyer and did not look at her much. When the last signature was done, he stood and offered his hand, as if they were closing a deal, which, she supposed, they were. No hard feelings, he said. None, she said, and meant it, because what she felt was not hard, and was not soft either, but was simply finished. She and Tessa went to lunch afterward and did not talk about him at all. They talked about Meridian. Meridian Hospitality Group opened its first office on a quiet floor of a building Camille chose because it had good light and no history. She did not announce it. There was no press, no party, no line in any paper. The whole point of these months was to be invisible, to build the company while Preston believed she was somewhere being sad. She rented the floor under the Meridian name. Eleanor Frost's fund wired the first tranche of capital. Bianca Reyes gave her notice at Vance Group, citing a family move, and started at Meridian the following Monday. For the first 8 weeks it was the 3 of them and a handful of people Camille and Bianca had quietly recruited, all of them talented, all of them tired of being credited last. They worked in a bright open room with white boards on every wall, and Camille felt something she had not felt in years, which was the specific pleasure of building a thing where her name was on the door. They had a clear plan. Meridian would not try to fight Vance Group in public. It would do what Camille did best, which was the difficult, beautiful work that bigger firms could not do well, and it would build a reputation deal by deal, the way real reputations were built, through the people who actually used the buildings telling other people what the buildings were like. The first project was small, a boutique property for a regional hotel group that had been quietly unhappy with the larger firms. Camille won it the way she won everything, by walking the client through the entire model herself, by knowing more about their business than they did, by being the most prepared person in any room she entered. The client signed. It was in the middle of those weeks that she met Adrian Cross. Eleanor brought him in. "There's a co-investor I want you to meet," she said. "He's not like the others. He built his own money. He doesn't need this deal. He likes good builders. I think you two will either get along immediately or not at all, and either way you'll know in 10 minutes. Adrian Cross was 44, calm, with the unhurried manner of a man who had stopped trying to impress anyone a long time ago. He ran Cross Capital, a fund he had built from nothing into something large, and he had a reputation in the industry for backing people rather than projects. He came to the Meridian office. Camille walked him through the model, the plan, the license structure, the long game with the Halstead. She did not soften any of it. She told him exactly what she intended to do and exactly how she intended to do it. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "Most people who come to me," he said, "tell me what they think I want to hear. You just told me what you're going to do whether I'm in or not. I find that I want to be in." He paused. "Also, for what it's worth, I sat across from your former husband at a conference 2 years ago and asked him a technical question about the Halstead, and he had to call someone over to answer it. I always wondered who he called." "Now you know," Camille said. "Now I know," he said. He invested. He took a board seat. And in the months that followed, as they worked together on the structure of the eventual acquisition, Camille found that she looked forward to the meetings where he would be in the room, not because of anything romantic, she told herself, but because he was the rare person who saw the whole board the way she did, who finished the second half of an idea she had only started. It was not, in those months, a romance. It was a partnership, two people who respected each other's minds and discovered, slowly, that they liked the rest of each other too. Adrian never pushed. He had a way of leaving room. Camille was grateful for the room. She had just left a marriage. She was not looking to walk into another one. She was looking to build a company. If something else grew alongside the building, it would grow on its own schedule, and she would not rush it. Meanwhile, across the city, the cracks in Vance Group began to show. She heard it first from the industry, the way you heard everything, sideways. The Halstead was behind schedule. The operator was unhappy about something internal. A senior development lead, meaning Bianca, had left and the projects she had quietly held together were starting to slip. Preston was giving more interviews than usual, which was always a sign that the actual work was not going well, because the man talked most when he had the least to show. Camille did not gloat. She noted. She updated her timeline. She told her team to keep their heads down and keep building, because the only thing that would matter when the Halstead finally fell loose was whether Meridian was ready to catch it. One evening, late, Adrian stayed after a meeting and they stood at the window looking at the city. "Can I ask you something that isn't business?" he said. "You can ask," she said. "Are you all right?" he said. "Not the company. You." She thought about it honestly. "I'm becoming all right," she said. "It's not a place you arrive at. It's a direction you walk in. I'm walking in it." He nodded, and did not try to fix anything, and that, more than anything he could have said, was the thing she noticed. She moved out of the penthouse on a Tuesday, while Preston was at the office. She had not gone back into the main bedroom since the night of the footage. She had been living in the guest room of her own home for months, and she had stopped feeling strange about it, which was its own kind of sad. Tessa had found her an apartment in a building with tall windows and a long view, and on a grey bright Tuesday morning a moving company came and took everything that was hers and nothing that was his. Her mother came to the new apartment that afternoon and stood at the windows. "This is yours," Loretta said. "All of it. Nobody else's." "All of it," Camille said. Loretta cooked in the new kitchen that night, the first meal in the place, and the smell of it made the apartment a home faster than any furniture could have. Whitney came to the door 2 days later. Camille saw her on the lobby camera, standing in a bright blue coat, holding her bag with both hands the way she did when she wanted to look small. She pressed the buzzer 3 times. She looked up at the camera. She did not know which apartment was Camille's, only the building, because Tessa had been careful. Camille watched the screen for a while. She had thought, in the early weeks, about what she would say if Whitney ever came. She had imagined whole conversations. She had wanted, at first, an explanation, an apology, something that would let her understand how the half-sister she had pulled into the family in a hospital hallway had decided to do this. But she had let that want go somewhere along the way. There was no explanation that would change anything. There was no apology that would make the 11 nights into 10. She did not buzz Whitney in. She turned off the screen and went to make tea. Whitney stood in the lobby for a while, and then she left. That night she sent a long message. Camille read the first 2 lines, which were an attempt at warmth, and did not read the rest. She did not reply. She blocked the number afterward, not out of anger, but because she had learned that some doors were better closed all the way, with the lock turned, so you stopped wondering whether to open them. That was the last contact between them. There would not be another. The divorce had finalized the month before. The license sat in Camille's control, 7 months now down to 4, ticking quietly toward the renewal date that Preston still did not know to fear. Meridian gained momentum through the winter. The boutique property opened to genuine acclaim, the kind that came from guests and not from press releases, and on the strength of it 2 more clients came to Meridian directly. Eleanor's fund expanded its commitment. Adrian's capital deepened. Bianca's development team grew to 9 people, all of them building the way Camille had taught them, all of them finally credited for what they made. Camille worked harder in those months than she had in years, and she noticed something she had not expected. The work did not feel like an escape from the betrayal. It felt like the opposite of it. Every well-made thing she built was a sentence in a different story than the one Preston and Whitney had tried to write for her. She was not the wronged wife. She was a builder who had been freed from a company that hid her name. She and Adrian grew closer in a way that had no single moment to it. There was a dinner after a long deal that ran late and turned, without either of them planning it, into a real conversation about their lives. There was a Saturday she did not realize was a date until halfway through, when she understood she had not been thinking about Meridian for 2 whole hours, which had not happened in months. There was the slow, steady discovery that she trusted him, which for her was a far larger thing than attraction. She did not rush it. He did not push it. They let it be what it was, which was 2 people who had each built something alone and were curious, carefully, about what they might build beside each other. One night she told him about the Halstead, all of it, not the structure this time but what it meant. How she had designed it. How she had walked every floor in the model 100 times. How it had her hand in every line and Preston's name on every sign. "I'm going to finish that building," she said. Not to take it from him. To take it back. "There's a difference." "I know there's a difference," Adrian said. "I've known since the first day. You're not doing any of this to him. You're doing it for the version of you that built that tower and never got to put her name on it. He's just standing in the way." She looked at him for a long moment. "How do you always know the second half of what I'm thinking?" she said. "Because you think in straight lines," he said. "Most people don't. It makes you easy to follow, if a person's paying attention. I've been paying attention. 4 months became 3. 3 became 2. Across the city, the Halstead was now badly behind, the operator was openly unhappy, and the lenders had begun, very quietly, to ask the kind of questions that lenders only asked when they were starting to be afraid. Camille had her team ready. She had her capital lined up. She had her structure built. She was waiting for one thing, and the thing was almost here. The license came up for renewal, and Camille did not renew it. She did it the way she did everything, cleanly and on time. Tessa sent the formal notice through the proper channels, a single letter stating that Hart Studio would not be renewing the design and brand license to Vance Group at the end of the current term, as was Hart Studio's right under the agreement. There was nothing dramatic about it. It was one piece of paper. It was also the keystone, and when it came out, the arch began to fall. The first thing to go was the operator partnership. The hotel operator on the Halstead had signed on specifically because the property would be built and run to Hart brand standards. Those standards lived inside the license. Without the license, the standards were gone, and the operator had a contractual right to walk, which it exercised within 3 weeks, because no operator wanted to put its name on a flagship that had just lost the thing that made it a flagship. When the operator walked, the loan covenants tripped. The construction loan and the mezzanine financing had both been underwritten on the assumption of a Hart-designed, operator-backed luxury tower. Take away the design license and the operator and what was left was a half-finished building and a pile of debt that no longer matched the thing it was lending against. The lenders did what lenders did. They called for a meeting. They demanded a plan. They began, in the careful language of people protecting their money, to use the word restructuring. Camille watched it happen from the outside, through the industry, through Tessa's network, through the press that was beginning to notice that the Great Vance flagship had gone strangely quiet. She did not celebrate. She updated her timeline. She told her team that the moment they had been building toward was coming, and that when it came they would not be the cause of it, they would simply be the only ones prepared for it. Preston scrambled. She heard about that too. He tried to find another design firm to replace the Hart frameworks, and learned what every other design firm already knew, that you could not bolt a new brand onto a building that had been conceived from the ground up around a different one, not without tearing out a year of work. He tried to talk the operator into staying. He could not, because the thing the operator had wanted was no longer his to offer. He gave a confident interview about the Halstead being on track, and the interview only made the lenders more nervous, because they could see the building from their offices and it was not on track at all. And Whitney's position collapsed quietly underneath all of it. Camille pieced it together later, from Bianca, who still had friends inside Vance. Whitney had run brand and public relations, which meant her job had been, in large part, to promote the Halstead. When the Halstead began to fall apart, there was nothing left for her to promote, and a brand person with no brand to sell became, very fast, a cost the company could not justify. Preston, under pressure from his board and his lenders, did what men like Preston always did when the building started to burn. He looked for things to throw out the window to make the load lighter. Whitney was light, and she was close, and she was expendable in a way the lenders were not. He did not stand by her. There had never, Camille understood now, been any real standing by in him. He had not chosen Whitney over Camille out of love. He had reached for her because she was there and easy and made him feel like the man he wanted to be, and now that she had stopped being useful and started being a liability, the reaching stopped. Whitney lost her role at Vance Group within a month of the operator walking. She was not protected. She was not promoted. She was simply, quietly, gone, the way people were gone from companies that were trying to survive. Whitney tried to reach Camille once more, near the end. It came through a mutual cousin, a message passed along, the gist of it that Whitney was in a hard spot, that she had lost her job, that she did not know what she was going to do, that she was sorry, that maybe Camille could help her find something, maybe at the new company everyone was whispering about, maybe Camille could put in a word. Camille read the message the cousin relayed. She did not feel triumph. She did not feel pity either, which surprised her a little. She felt the clean, settled nothing of a door that had been closed all the way. Tell her I wish her well, Camille said to the cousin, and that there is nothing for her with me. Not a word. Not a job. Not anything. That part is over. She did not say it cruelly. She did not need to. It was simply true. She had built Meridian out of people who had been underestimated and trusted and proven loyal. There was no seat at that table for the person who had used her trust as a place to hide. There never would be. Camille had given Whitney a key once, in a hospital hallway, out of grief and a good heart. She was not going to make that mistake twice. She told Loretta about it that weekend, over the greens and cornbread her mother had brought up on the train. "Are you all right?" Loretta asked. "She's still your father's blood, whatever else she is." "She's my father's blood," Camille agreed. "And my father broke things and didn't fix them, and she learned that from somewhere. I'm not going to be the next thing she breaks. I can wish her well from very far away. That's the most I have." Loretta nodded slowly. "That's not bitterness," she said. "That's just knowing the cost of a thing and refusing to pay it twice. I raised you better than I knew." Across the city, the Halstead sat half-built against the winter sky, an expensive tower with no operator, no brand, and a wall of lenders demanding a plan that Preston did not have. Camille had the plan. She had always had the plan. She was just waiting for the building to come looking for it. The Halstead went up for sale in March, though no one called it that. The language was careful. The lenders, having lost faith in Preston's ability to deliver the project, pushed Vance Group toward what they called a recapitalization, which was the polite word for finding someone with money and competence to take the building off their hands before it became a complete loss. A process was opened. Qualified buyers were invited to submit proposals to recapitalize and complete the project. The list of qualified buyers was short, because there were very few firms in the country that could finish a project this complicated, and almost none of them wanted to inherit a half-built tower with a wrecked brand. Meridian submitted a proposal. Camille had built Meridian, in part, for exactly this moment, and so the proposal was the strongest in the process by a wide margin, because Meridian was the only bidder that already understood the building from the inside. Meridian had the design IP, since Camille owned it. Meridian had a hotel operator ready to sign, because Camille's reputation was good and the brand frameworks were hers to license to a new property. Meridian had the capital, Eleanor's fund and Cross Capital standing behind it. And Meridian had the one thing no other bidder could have, which was the person who had conceived the building in the first place, ready to walk in and finish it. The lenders looked at the proposals. There was no real contest. Meridian could complete the Halstead faster, cheaper, and better than anyone, because Meridian was, in the way that mattered, the building's original author returning to her own work. Tessa structured the deal so that Meridian would acquire the project entity, assume the construction at a discounted basis reflecting its distressed state, restore the design and brand license, bring in the operator, and complete the tower. Preston's company would be paid out of the proceeds at a level that, after the debt was cleared, left Vance Group with very little and Preston with even less. He would walk away with his name off the building and a settlement that barely covered his exposure. The press got the story before Preston fully understood it. A real estate reporter, working from leaked documents, ran a piece under a headline that named the acquiring firm Meridian Hospitality Group to recapitalize and complete the troubled Halstead Tower. The story read, backed by Frost Capital Partners and Cross Capital, led by founder and chief executive Camille Hart. Camille Hart. She heard about Preston's reaction the same way she heard about everything, sideways, this time from Bianca, who had it from a friend still inside Vance. Preston had been at his desk when the story circulated. He had read it twice. He had said her name out loud, the way a man says a word he does not believe. Then he had started making calls, to the lenders, to the operator, to the process advisor, and one by one he had learned the same thing, which was that the building he had thought was his had been built on a foundation that had always belonged to his wife, and that the foundation had walked out the door with her months ago, and that he had signed it away himself, in a divorce he had asked for, on a Sunday, feeling generous. He called Camille directly. She let it go to voicemail. Then she listened to the message, once. It was not the message of a man who understood what had happened. It was the message of a man who thought there was still a deal to be made, who thought he could talk to her the way he used to talk to her, who said her name and then said let's be reasonable and then said surely we can work something out between us, and who did not seem to grasp that the working something out had already happened, in conference rooms he had not been invited to, Over months he had spent talking to interviewers instead of looking at his own books. She did not call him back. There was nothing to say that the deal documents would not say for her. The Vance Group board called an emergency meeting. Camille was no longer part of Vance Group, and so she did not see the minutes the way she once would have, but she did not need to. The outcome was obvious to anyone who could read a balance sheet. A board with a half-built flagship, a fled operator, nervous lenders, and a chief executive who had personally signed away the company's most valuable asset did not keep that chief executive in charge for long. The board began, in the language boards used, to explore leadership transition. Tessa called Camille the evening the acquisition cleared its final condition. "It's done," Tessa said. "All conditions met. Funds confirmed. The operator signed this afternoon. The only thing left is the closing. Both parties sign the transfer documents in person. Preston has to be there. As the current owner's chief executive, he has to execute the transfer himself." "In person," Camille said. "In person," Tessa said. "He's expecting to send his lawyers. He's expecting a phone call and a stack of papers. He has not been told who's signing on our side." There was a pause. "Do you want him told?" Camille looked out the tall windows of her apartment at the city, bright and gray under the early spring sky, the Halstead somewhere out there in the skyline, half finished, waiting for her. "No," she said. "Let him find out the way I found out. By watching someone walk through a door." "Set the date," Tessa said. "Set it," Camille said. She woke at 5 on the morning of the closing. She lay in the quiet of her own apartment for a while, in the bed that was hers and no one else's, in the home that had her name on the lease and her mother's cooking in the kitchen and nothing in it that belonged to anybody who had ever lied to her. The city below the window was just beginning to lighten. She got up. She made coffee. She stood at the closet and looked at the suit she had chosen weeks ago for this exact morning, deep red, structured at the shoulders, with a white blouse underneath. Her mother had told her, once, a long time ago, to always wear color into the rooms that mattered, because the rooms that mattered were full of people who wore gray to disappear, and a woman who walked in wearing red had already decided not to. Camille put on the red suit. She did her hair up, formal and precise. She looked at herself in the long mirror, standing, ready, and she thought, not with anger but with something quieter and more permanent, that she had built her way back to this exact moment one careful piece at a time. Adrian picked her up at 8. He did not say much in the car. He had learned, over the months, when she needed silence, and he gave it to her now without being asked. At a light he reached over and squeezed her hand once, and let it go. "You don't have to say anything to him," Adrian said. "You've already said everything. The building says it." "I know," she said. The closing was held on a high floor of a downtown tower, in a long conference room with windows that faced the river. Eleanor Frost was there, and the lenders' council, and the operators' representatives, and Tessa, and the Meridian team. They arrived first, by design. The Vance Group side came in afterward, Preston's lawyers, and then Preston himself, who walked in talking to one of them and did not at first look up at the room. When he did look up, he saw Eleanor, and the lenders, and the lawyers, and a long table set for a signing, and at the far head of the table, in a deep red suit, with her hair up and her hands folded and her folder squared in front of her, his former wife. Camille watched the moment land on his face. Confusion, then recognition, then a thing that was not quite fear but lived next door to it. He had expected paperwork. He had not expected the person who had built the thing he was losing to be the person taking it. "Good morning," Camille said. "Thank you all for being here. For those who haven't met me, I'm Camille Hart, founder and chief executive of Meridian Hospitality Group. I understand we're here to complete the transfer of the Halstead project." Preston did not sit down right away. One of his lawyers said something to him, low, and he sat. The closing proceeded the way closings did, page by page, each item read into the record, each signature placed in sequence. Tessa walked the room through the transfer of the project entity, the assumption of construction, the restoration of the design and brand license that Camille owned, the operator agreement that had been signed the week before, the completion timeline under Meridian's control. Eleanor confirmed the capital. The lenders confirmed the payoff. Every condition that had been built over months clicked into place, one after another, exactly as Camille had mapped them on a clean page in a notebook the night she chose the second path. When it came time for Vance Group to execute the transfer, the lawyer slid the first document across to Preston. Preston picked up the pen. He looked at Camille. It was the longest he had looked at her in a year. She met his look and did not look away. She did not look angry. She did not look satisfied. She looked like a woman who had decided, a long time ago, on a clarity she had earned the hard way, that this moment was not going to be about him. It was about the building. It had always been about the building. He signed. He signed every page. When he set the pen down, he opened his mouth, as if there were something left to say, some version of let's be reasonable that he had not yet tried. Congratulations on the project, he said finally, which was not what he had meant to say, and was the only thing the room would let him say. Thank you, Camille said. We'll take good care of it. The last signature went down. The Halstead was Meridian's. The building Camille had designed, that had carried his name on every sign, would now be finished by the person who had drawn it, under the brand that had always been hers. When it was done, Camille stood. She buttoned her jacket. She gathered her folder. She thanked the room. She did not look at Preston again, because she had already given that look the attention it deserved, which was one long honest moment and not a second more. She walked out, and Adrian walked beside her, and in the hallway Eleanor caught up with them. I told him, 2 years ago, Eleanor said, that whoever built his model should be running his company. I'm only sorry it took this long to be right. It took exactly as long as it needed to, Camille said. The Halstead opened 14 months later. Camille finished it the way she had always meant to, the brand restored, the design completed to the standard she had drawn, the operator she had chosen running it the way she had designed it to be run. On the night it opened, the building lit up across the skyline, and somewhere on a high floor there was a small plaque in the lobby that named the firm that had built it, and the name on the plaque was Meridian. She married Adrian that summer, in a small ceremony with the people who had actually shown up for her, Loretta in the front row, Tessa standing beside her, Bianca and Eleanor among the guests. It was not a billionaire wedding and it was not a fairy tale. It was two people who had each built something alone deciding to keep building beside each other. Adrian had never once tried to rescue her, which was the reason she had let him in. He understood that she had not needed rescuing. She had needed a partner who could keep up. In the fall, the Hospitality Development Council held its annual awards, and Meridian Hospitality Group was named the Firm of the Year, on the strength of the Halstead and the dozen quieter buildings Camille and her team had made along the way. Camille walked onto the stage to accept it, in a royal blue dress, under the bright lights, on her own 2 feet, with her own name on the company she had built out of the worst year of her life. Loretta was in the 3rd row. Tessa was already standing. Bianca and Eleanor were on their feet beside her. Adrian was watching from the side, not because he had done any of it, but because he had been there while she did. Camille took the award. She looked out at the room. A few years ago, she said, I learned that the most valuable thing I had ever built had someone else's name on it. So I built it again. This time I kept the name. That's the whole story. Thank you. She left the stage. Whitney was not in the room. Whitney was nowhere in Camille's life, and never would be again, and Camille did not think about her at all that night, which was its own quiet kind of ending. Preston was not in the room either. His company had been restructured out from under him months before. His name was on nothing now that anyone wanted. Camille walked off the stage and into the rest of it, the company, the building, the people who had stayed, the life she had built with her own two hands after the people she trusted had tried to take it from her. She had walked back into the room. This time, the room was hers.